The first defense we're looking at for the over-under is a little more preemptive work as always. Stopping our opponent from being able to pin us with that lead shoulder and have their head cross the center line. As I kind of demonstrated, if Steph is performing this over-under pass, my leg's in between his head is coming over to this side of my hip, and his chin is coming down to my hip. And he's got this underhook grip really controlling. When this happens, everything sucks a lot more. And that's what we're going to be working on all the other videos afterwards to address that. But the easiest way is to stop our opponent from being able to get into this space. We're looking at framing that lead shoulder, because this is the shoulder that's coming down and making contact and pinning us. How we block that shoulder is kind of up to you. It can be both hands to the shoulder, because this still, by virtue of me controlling the shoulder, stops Stephan's head from being able to get closer to my body. It can be that cross collar grip, punching at the shoulder here to stop it. We can be blocking at the head. For me, I like blocking here with this arm, and I like trying to use this hand to match and try and find ways that I can break posture. I might be able to start bending forward and really pushing Stephan out of the way here. The more I can frame out the head, as I turn my hips back into face my opponent, my life becomes even easier.
There's a strong redirection component. My head needs to go across your hip. You're pushing the same side.
Body follows the head. So if I'm able to drive your head over to that side and keep your hips and head on the same side of my body rather than allowing you to control both sides of my hip, life's going to be so much easier.
But that's a preemptive, this.
Yeah,
you probably have to start setting that up here. You see me going for it.
I should always have frames here. If I'm back like this, playing guard, unless we're doing specific drills at this point, there should be no reason why you can just jump in at my hips. If you're working at my knees are in constant contact with you, my hands reach about the same distance as my knees, so these are always here. So if Stephan's going to try and just muscle his way into an over-under pass at this point, I'm going to be able to just put my feet back to his hips and possibly start setting up triangles. Good guys are going to find ways of being able to break these defenses and maneuver in, so the job's here is I have to be much closer to be able to try and frame here. Frame that lead shoulder, he's much closer to my body, but he's still parallel to me. He hasn't managed to get that head across like this. So here I'm keeping my elbow tight to my body, and I'm just checking the side of his head while I'm framing that shoulder, trying to push him down or push me away. So as Stephan's trying to complete this pass, it's difficult. He's wanting to try and flatten my hips out. I need to keep trying to keep my hips facing him. If I need to escape my hips, you can take this foot, we'll just turn slightly, and generate base with this. Because he's got the underhook on it, it's not stopping me from being able to put my foot on the mat. So as I'm checking him here, foot on the mat, hipping out, so I can adjust my angle here. As he keeps on trying here, I'm looking at using these frames, and if I can, work this top knee in. So as I keep pushing Stephan further and further away, bring this top knee over his shoulder. If he keeps his head really down, I might break his posture like this too, but he's going to circle his head out, and we're just going to end up almost like a scissor sweep position with a bit of a half guard where I'm over top of the bicep here. What this has done is create opportunities where obviously I could potentially look at ways to drag to the back, but Stephan knows that this sucks, he's going to start backing away, and I'm going to look to reestablish guard. We don't necessarily have to get that top leg in there as a frame, but obviously it's going to help. Whether we force that space and wedge our leg in there, or the space is created and we fill that space afterwards. Here, I can use my elbow and block here, I can block here at the head. This is how typically if a white belt tries to dive in an over-under pass, I've stopped them at this stage. There's nothing at this point for them to be able to threaten me with. Here I go for a collar grip here, I'm going to push. Here I realign my knee so that my knee comes down into a frame. I turn myself so if Stephan keeps driving, there's nothing. Bring my foot out to the hip, and then use that to create the extra space I need to now free this top leg to get myself back to guard. You're just trying to manipulate my leg as leader like all these other passes so that he can control the rotation of my hips. And I'm just looking at turning my hips back towards him so I can use frames. Try and bring that top knee in, but it's not necessary. The most important thing is blocking the lead shoulder that's going to pin you and stopping his head from crossing your center line. The over-under pass is a pressure-based pass, which means our opponent has to be in really good control of their center of gravity and the momentum. What happens with lower belts is that they get carried away with their momentum and they kind of throw themselves at you, and then they lose control of that and their center of gravity, and it becomes easy to redirect them. This isn't a video that's going to be able to be dedicated towards working against high-level black belts, besides maybe creating a little bit of shifts to try and cause a kazushi to a little bit of off balance and to create vulnerability to tie other stuff together. But against lower belts, you're going to be able to completely sweep them from these situations. And so it's something I just want to talk about, because this is another one of those circumstances that the better you are at passing, you're going to be better at the retention movements here as well. So here, as Stephan moves into an over-under pass, I want to try and keep this knee framing his hip as much as possible, where I basically almost have like a half guard. He's got the over, his head is completed to the other side. He's got the underhook here, but see how my knee is still here framing his hip? He's reaching down, grabbing the pants from my ankle. This is going to be a big part of the battle. The more I can keep this as a frame with load bearing into his hip here, the better. What people are going to be doing from here is sometimes lifting their hips too high up and close to you, and I'm going to be able to control them and pull them on top of me. What I can also, this is one of the times where framing down at the hip can be absolutely okay, because I have my knee here. I'm going to support it with my hand doubling up, and I'm going to use this. You can reach and grab the belt if you want, but from here, without even having much for base, I'm just going to create a rock where I'm twisting myself a little bit to the side and kicking upwards to start to control my opponent's center of gravity on top of me. That is what happens there is that instead of somebody being in control of their center of gravity here and keeping their hips back, they start to walk themselves up almost like a headstand, and then we're going to use that to our advantage to throw them off to the side. Very common way that newer people get super crazy and dive in, especially with the momentum, where if I'm here and Stephan just dives in like crazy, you'll be able to bring them back and over top of your shoulder. So it's always something to check, that as you're dealing with somebody, you got this frame here, seeing if you can move them in this direction. We can also kick this direction, but more commonly, we're going to be able to create a bit of a twist and pull them to the side. The next video I'll be showing you guys like a proper twist sweep, but even at a lower stage, just by having this frame here, if Stephan's base becomes really narrow as he's trying to get up on his feet and walk around, I'm going to be able to use this leg to club his hip and use this arm to trap his arm so I can control up at the elbow or at the wrist so that he can't post. And I'm just going to be doing a chop down here and framing into his hip to push him off to the side. Not common that you're going to actually sweep somebody and knock them completely down from there, but what's going to happen is Stephan's going to post his arms out, and then I'm going to be able to start re-establishing frames at this point. So anytime we create that dilemma where Stephan has to choose to give up control to post and stay on top, or hold on greedily but end up getting swept, good guys are always going to recognize that range bound, they're going to let go and post. Exactly. So as this happens, keep that knee pushing into your opponent's hip. That knee-elbow connection, pulling it in if you need to, and then finding ways to push them back, push them up, off to the side here. As soon as this movement happens, his head's crossed back across my center line. I'm going to look to reinforce this, framing at the bicep. I'm going to look to generate some base off of his hips. So here I'm going to be generating some force by extending my leg into his hip here. So even if I don't use my other leg, I can push myself away. Then even here, I can curl into his shoulder and use that without using my other leg to turn. But with the combined effort of my curl and my extension, I'm able to adjust my hips back to this 45-degree angle. Now as Stephan tries to drive into me, I have frames properly aligned. I'll be able to bring my foot up to his hip, drive away, bring my top knee in, perform a high leg. Finding places that I can establish strong frames to be able to create greater distance. So same thing, over and over and over again, guys. It's a frame versus lever battle, and making sure that you have the proper angle of your hips. So in this circumstance, see if you can take advantage of your opponent's center of gravity and momentum and sweep them from this position. This is one of the few times I'm going to show you an actual sweep that we're able to complete and get on top if we want to, and it works great against the over-under pass. So this is the twist sweep. As Stephan's established this over-under pass, this is the battle of getting that knee down. If he can't get this knee, he's not going to be able to beat me here. As soon as this knee comes out from being a frame here and goes through it, if I just let my legs sit here, Stephan's going to control it, adjust his hips, and he's going to finish the over-under pass. What I'm going to do is use that little bit of momentum to my advantage, and I'm going to block his other arm. We'll show you another angle in a second. And as he kicks my leg through, I'm going to kick my leg through with it, accelerating the motion through and blocking here down at his leg. What I'm doing here is I'm blocking the right side of his body from being able to base. And I'm going to cut my legs down. You can push at the hip as well if you want to. It's not a bad idea. Just make sure we're not putting our fingers in the pocket where they're going to potentially be accessed as levers. I'm creating a twisting motion here to reverse my opponent and sweep them. So here, as he's up, as soon as my leg gets fired through here, it hooks down and plants to the ground as best as I can. This stops him from being able to extend his right leg out. If I tried to do this, like we talked earlier in the last video about trying to shift the center of gravity here, a better guy should keep recomposing his base. He'll just step his right leg out. If I don't hold on to his arm and I move him, he'll just let go here, but he hasn't moved his head yet, so I haven't actually gained much better positioning for myself. I can't adjust from here. So control the sleeve. If he's gripping up higher, if it's say no-gi, we can grip, or if he's grabbing up at the lapel, we can grab the elbow. And what I'm looking at doing is as this leg fires through here, and with that momentum, you can see how he's already started tilting. I'm pushing at his hip. I'm going to cut this leg down for momentum and block his leg. I tuck my foot in. I don't want to have my foot out like this because I'm going to end up in some awkward position here, and unless I'm really flexible, I'm pretty stuck here. He's going to be able to come back up. So I cut my leg underneath, dead toes, so my toes are just laying flat along the mat, so if he rolls over it, it's fine. If I go live toes here, Stephan drops here, this doesn't feel good at all. Dead toes, keep yourself safe, low profile, tuck and land here. Now from here, obviously I'm going to have to start pushing myself back so that he's unable to work himself into this deep half guard or a low underhook into it or into a single leg. So this is a great one. I use this one all the time. In order to beat that leg, that is such a tough battle to have that the guard passer is going to be just driving it in with everything they have because they know that when they win that battle, they're probably going to win the pass. And so as that happens, we're taking advantage of the energy that they're giving us. So let's do just one more from this angle. Here, I'm always controlling here. This is a great place for me to put my arm once it's lost the ability to frame his head. And then as Stephan pushes this through, completing the twist sweep. From here, start framing your opponent, working for underhooks or something because he's got an underhook on my leg and he's going to be able to get a deep grip of the hip here. So my goal is to start sprawling my hips away, cross-facing my opponent. So as we land in this position, this is not good for me. Work to inside space, work to cross-face, sprawl that left hip back, and now we're going to be looking at passing half guard. Always an alignment battle, controlling inside space. Regardless if we're on bottom or top, whoever has the better alignment is probably going to win the fight.